At 6:42 a.m. My phone buzzed on the kitchen table. Linda texted, "Plans changed. You're not coming on the cruise. Emily wants her real dad." That was it. No punctuation mistake, no typo, no room for confusion. Just quiet exile in one line. By noon, my marriage was already over, though no one had said divorce out loud. Linda didn't need to. She'd drawn the line. All that remained was how long I'd pretend I hadn't seen it. I stared at the screen like it might blink and take it back. The phone buzzed again. Another message elbowing its way through the grain of the table, but I didn't flip it over. I let it vibrate against the wood until it stopped. The coffee pot hissed behind me, burning the last inch I hadn't poured. The house was still, the kind of quiet that feels less like peace and more like someone holding their breath. Outside, the maple tree in the front yard shuddered, leaves breaking free and scraping across the concrete in the wind, like they were trying to get away. The AM radio mumbled a farm report out of Cedar Rapids. Corn futures, livestock, the Mississippi's slow rise. All of it useless but familiar. I left it on out of habit, maybe superstition. As if something steady could keep me from noticing the shift in the air. I sat down in the head chair at the kitchen table. The one that faced the window. The one Linda used to call your spot with a smile. Back when things were still warm. Felt cold now. Strange how a chair can betray you. I didn't drink the coffee. I just sat, hands on the table, staring at the phone face down like it was a weapon. 14 years. That's how long I'd lived in that house on East Locust Street. I moved in with a couch that sagged in the middle, a toolbox, and a promise I meant. Emily was 12. Sharp elbows, braces, hair always in her eyes. She watched everything. Every move I made, every inch of space I took in her mother's world. Rick Donnelly had left more holes than footsteps. His absence hung in the air like smoke. Linda told me about him that first night we sat on the back steps, sweating into our beers. "Rick's gone," she said, not like she was angry, like she was tired. "It's just us now. We're a family now." She said that a lot in those early years, especially when things cost money. When I paid the first orthodontist bill, $3, for 100 in a single swipe, Linda kissed my shoulder and whispered, "You're a real dad now." She made it sound like a ceremony. No paperwork, no courtroom, just dollars and silence. When Emily turned 16, I paid for the used Honda Civic we found on Craigslist, the one with a dent in the bumper and a rattling AC. Linda looked at me across the hood and said, "This is what fathers do." When I set up the auto debit for the cruise, our 10-year anniversary, her idea, Linda pressed her lips to my cheek and said, "We deserve this. We." The way people say we when it suits them. But the text this morning didn't say we. It said Emily wants her real dad. That word again. Real. What makes someone real? A sperm donation and a last name? Or the man who pulls the late-night shifts? Who scrubs the driveway after winter? Who sits through dental cleanings and pays for the caps? The phone buzzed again. Another message trying to climb back into my attention. I didn't move. I poured the rest of the coffee out. The mug clanged against the porcelain like it resented me for the waste. I rinsed it anyway, watched the steam curl up from the sink and disappear. Then I picked up the phone. It wasn't another text, it was a voicemail. Linda's voice, sharp and flat. "Mark, don't make this into a thing. It's just. Emily asked for this. You understand, right? Call me when you've calmed down." Calm down. I closed my eyes and leaned against the counter. I saw Emily at 12 again, hunched over this very table, math homework spread across it like a battlefield. She'd been crying. Rick had promised to help her that week. Said he'd bring pizza, sit with her, make up for missing her birthday. He never showed. I remembered walking in from the garage, dropping my tool belt, and seeing her shoulders shake. She looked up at me, eyes red, lips pressed tight like she didn't want the noise of it to escape. I sat down next to her, not at the head of the table, just beside her, and said, "Okay, kiddo, let's do this together." She smiled then, just a little, crooked, like someone finally letting their guard down. I helped her with fractions that night. I stayed until the tears were gone. I played the voicemail again. Linda's voice sounded more rehearsed the second time, like she'd practiced it in her head before dialing. I didn't call back. At 9:30, I was supposed to be on the road to Dubuque for a dealership visit. I put on my jacket, grabbed my keys, and stopped in the hallway where all the family photos hung. There was one from the year we refinanced the mortgage. Linda and Emily on the couch, smiling, and me standing just off to the side, one hand on the cushion, like I wasn't sure where to put myself. I'd never noticed that before. At the dealership, I shook hands, talked numbers, nodded at the right times. I missed a question and had to ask for it again. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. On the drive back, I pulled into a Casey's and sat in the truck, engine idling, radio low. I listened to the phone ring until it stopped. The silence afterward felt heavy, like a door shutting somewhere behind me. I thought about calling my buddy Tom from the VFW. I thought about calling my sister in Moline. I thought about calling Rick Donnelly and asking him what the hell gave him the right to step back into a life he left behind like a guest who finally realized there was a bill. Instead, I drove home. The house was too quiet. Linda had left early for the airport, probably smiling the whole way. The bed was made, tight, flat like a hotel room no one wanted to mess up. I sat at the table again in the head chair and looked at the empty place settings. I imagined Linda and Emily leaning over the rail of the cruise ship, wind in their hair, Rick beside them like he belonged there. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Emily this time. Please respect our space. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Then I set the phone down. Not with anger, just gently, like it was something hot I didn't want to touch anymore. The AM radio clicked to a new story, river levels, boats, something about departures and returns. I sat there listening longer than I meant to, breathing, letting the hurt settle into something heavier, something quieter. That was the moment it stopped being about the cruise. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't a miscommunication. This wasn't a rough morning. This was a verdict. A line drawn not today, but years ago, inch by inch, while I smiled through holidays and paid every bill. They'd just stopped pretending. I stood up, took the chair at the head of the table, and pushed it in under the lip like I was clearing a space. Then I picked up my phone, scrolled to settings, and turned off every notification. The silence was a relief. That night I didn't sleep. Not tossing and turning, just still. Eyes closed, but my mind walked in circles. Every time I drifted off, one phrase pulled me back. My real dad. It was a splinter behind my eyelid. Small. Invisible. But every blink hurt. At 5:30 a.m. I gave up. Shaved. Dressed. Made coffee again. This time I drank it standing. The house looked different in the early light, like it had already started erasing me. I didn't sleep so much as wait for morning to admit what I already knew. My eyes were closed, but my mind kept circling the same sentence, like a tongue worrying a cracked tooth. My real dad. It didn't echo loudly. It didn't need to. It just sat there, patient, grinding everything else down. At 5:30, I gave up. Shaved. Dressed. Made coffee again. Drank it standing. The house felt like it was holding still on purpose, like it didn't want to tip its hand. Sunlight crept across the counters, touching things I'd paid for, fixed, replaced. None of it felt like mine anymore. I checked my phone once. 3 missed calls from Linda. 2 voicemails. I didn't listen. Whatever she had to say had already been said. On the drive to work, the AM radio faded in and out between stations. Farm reports, interest rates, a preacher talking about patience like it was a virtue instead of a warning label. I thought about the word rates the way a man thinks about weather, something you don't argue with, only prepare for. At the office, I made it until 10 o'clock before my hands started to shake. Not panic, not fear, something colder. I told my assistant I needed to step out and drove straight to Davenport Community Credit Union. I'd been banking there since before Linda. Same parking lot, same squeaky door. The woman at the counter smiled when she saw me. Susan, according to her badge. Morning, Mark. What can I help you with? I need to look at my accounts, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She pulled everything up without fuss. Checking, savings, auto debits. I watched the screen scroll like a confession I hadn't known I was writing. Mortgage, utilities, insurance. And there it was, the cruise payment, scheduled and obedient, all in my name. Susan glanced at me. Everything okay? I nodded. Just making sure. She printed the statements and slid them across the counter. The paper was warm, smelled faintly of toner and coffee. I sat in my truck afterward, engine off, printouts on my lap. The numbers didn't accuse me anymore. They explained me. That was when something shifted. Not anger, not revenge. Clarity. That night, instead of going home right away, I pulled into the VFW on West 3rd. The lot was half full. Inside smelled like fried onions and old stories. I ordered a beer and sat at the end of the bar. Walt Prendergast slid onto the stool next to me without asking. 80 if he was a day. Navy cap worn soft as felt. You look like hell, he said. Feel worse, I told him. I didn't give him the whole story. Just enough. The text. The cruise. The way it landed. Walt took a sip and nodded once. People don't change, he said. They just get more honest when they think they've won. I stared into my beer. I don't want to blow things up. He set his glass down. Then stop building yourself into places you don't own. That stayed with me. At home, I opened the filing cabinet in the spare room. Metal. Screeched if you pulled too fast. Inside were years of folders I'd kept because my father taught me to. Brace's paperwork. Emily's name. My signature. The mechanic's invoice when her Honda needed a transmission. College fund statements. Small amounts. Steady. Years long. Then I found something newer. Transfers I didn't recognize at first. Small. Regular. Linda moving money into an account with Emily's name on it. Quiet. Unmentioned. I laughed once. Short. Surprised. Not angry yet. Just clear. The next morning I called the cruise line. The woman on the phone was polite and uncurious. Reason for cancellation? I'm no longer a passenger, I said. In more ways than one. She processed it without comment. That afternoon I called an attorney Susan had recommended. We met the next day. Younger than I expected. Tie loose. Desk crowded. The house is titled solely in your name, he said, skimming. You can sell. What about my wife? She lives there, he said. That's not the same thing. I drove home slow. Sat at the table again. Head chair. Papers spread out. Phone face down beside them. I wasn't angry. I was tired. And for the first time, sure. Sure that what I'd been calling patience was really permission. I stacked the folders neatly. Pushed the chair back in. Tomorrow I'd make a call. I waited one full day before making it. Not because I was unsure. Because silence lets you hear what you've been avoiding. The realtor answered on the second ring. Karen Whitfield. Bondorf office. I'm thinking of selling, I said. She didn't ask why. Just asked for the address. 2 days later, we walked the house. I kept my hands in my pockets while she tapped walls. Checked windows. It looked smaller than I remembered. Like it was already letting go. Your wife knows? She asked carefully. She's traveling, I said. I'll handle it. Karen nodded. We can move fast. But if she contests it, it could get loud. I'm done with noise, I said. That night Linda called. Then called again. I let it ring. A voicemail came through. Her voice sharper now. Mark, stop this. You're embarrassing me. Rick's right here. He thinks you're overreacting. Rick. I turned the phone off. The decision had already been made. The offer came quicker than I expected. A young couple, Ben and Alyssa Morales, newly stationed at Rock Island Arsenal, expecting their first child. She was showing already. Not much, just enough to make her walk like she was learning how to carry something delicate. Karen told me they were pre-approved, VA loan, clean paperwork. They need to move before the end of the month, she said. We can close fast if you're ready. I didn't hesitate. They're asking for a little off the price. I thought of the dining table, the head chair, the way I'd always slid it back in when things got tense, like I was apologizing for taking up space. Tell them yes, I said. Signing day was quiet. Just me, the title agent, and the hum of fluorescent lights. The paperwork felt heavier than I expected. My hand shook once when I signed the last page. Then it didn't. When I stood to leave, my phone buzzed. A text from Emily. Dad, Mark, please don't do anything drastic. I stared at it for a long time. She typed Dad, then backed out of it halfway. Like even in crisis, she didn't know where I belonged. I typed back. I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago. That night I packed the truck. Just the things that mattered. Tools, documents, the framed photo of my dad in his navy blues. I left the rest. Furniture, dishes, Emily's graduation picture on the hallway shelf. I didn't even touch it. When I pulled out of the driveway before dawn, the house looked the same. Quiet, solid, already belonging to someone else. I drove west, letting the sun come up behind me. I didn't look back. They came back on a Tuesday. I know because Karen texted me at 3:18 p.m. Her message had no punctuation. Just, they're there now. I was sitting in a diner outside Muscatine. Vinyl booths, coffee that tasted like burnt toast. The kind of place where the waitress doesn't ask how you're doing because she already knows you're not. I didn't respond right away. I stared at the napkin dispenser like it might offer advice. Then I picked up the phone and waited. Linda was the first to call. I didn't answer. 5 minutes later, Emily. I didn't answer that either. Karen filled me in later. Calm voice, realtor tone like she was describing flood damage. They pulled in smiling, she said. Suitcases in the trunk. Laughing. Emily wore sunglasses. Phone in hand. Linda still in vacation mode. Shirt loose at the neck. Hair pinned up. Rick got out of the back seat. Polo shirt. Cheap watch. The kind of smile men wear when they think they've won. They didn't realize anything was wrong until they reached the door. First, Linda thought it was funny. Some car they didn't recognize. Lawn trimmed differently. A new planter by the door. Then she tried the key. It didn't turn. She jiggled it harder, like maybe it had gotten stuck out of spite. When that didn't work, she called my name. Ben Morales opened the door. Halfway. Chain still on. Polite. Apologetic. Told her they'd just moved in. Gave his name. Asked if he could help. Linda laughed. That short, nervous kind of laugh people use when the rules stop working. You're in my house, she said. Ben didn't flinch. Ma'am, we bought this house last week. Emily froze behind her. Phone lowered. Eyes scanning the porch like she expected someone to step out and yell surprise. Linda stepped back and stared at the house like it had betrayed her. That was when the yelling started. Rick moved forward, hand out like he was going to stop her. He didn't. Alyssa appeared behind Ben, one hand resting on her stomach. Protective. Ready. Police were called. 2 officers. One older looked tired. One younger wide-eyed. Paperwork was shown. Names were checked. Dates confirmed. The older officer turned to Linda. Ma'am, whose name is on the deed? Karen told me there was a pause. One of those long, perfect silences where the world rearranges itself. Linda didn't answer. Later that night, she called. I let it ring 4 times before I picked up. Mark, she said, breathless, like she'd run from the car to the phone. What did you do? I leaned back in the motel chair, stared out the window at a flickering gas station sign. I sold the house, I said. You can't do that, she snapped. That's our home. No, I said. That was my house. You just lived in it. She started talking fast then. Threats. Legal. Rick in the background saying my name like a curse. He'd never have done this, she said. Rick. I laughed. You're right. He never did a damn thing. She didn't like that. Emily came on the line a moment later. Quieter. No yelling. That almost hurt more. I didn't think you'd really do it, she said. Her voice cracked on the word really. I didn't think you'd mean what you said, I replied. We sat in silence for a long time. I could hear Linda in the background. saying my name over and over like it was a sin that needed confessing. I raised you, I said finally. I didn't rent a place in your life. Emily didn't answer. The call ended. I turned off my phone, sat in the quiet, let it settle. The next morning I moved into a rental. Small place near the river. 1 bedroom. Nothing fancy. The mattress was still wrapped in plastic when I laid down that first night. I left it like that. On the counter, I unfolded the card Ben and Alyssa had left in my old mailbox. Thank you. In blue ink. No signatures. A photo tucked inside, grainy ultrasound. Their child. I stood there holding it, the smell of cardboard and new paint clinging to my clothes, and thought of the old dining room. The head chair. For the first time, I wasn't sitting in it, and it didn't feel like loss. A week later, the papers came. Not divorce. Not yet. Just noise. Linda was going after the house, trying to unwind it like a watch she'd never learned how to wind in the first place. I got served on a Friday afternoon. Thick envelope. Name spelled right for once. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cleaner. I wore the same blazer I used for dealership meetings and funerals. Neutral. Forgettable. Linda arrived 10 minutes late. Heels too loud on tile. Emily beside her, eyes down. Rick followed, hands in his pockets like he was on a date. The mediator was a woman in her 60s. Reading glasses on a chain. She opened the file and looked at me. Let's keep this simple, she said. We're here to discuss property. Linda jumped in before I could sit. He abandoned us, she said, pointing like she was naming the villain in a school play. He sold our home out from under us. My daughter was humiliated. The mediator raised a hand. Mr. Halverson will have a chance to speak. I waited. That was the hardest part. Letting it pile up. Letting them throw the match into the kindling. When she turned to me, I stood and placed the manila envelope on the table. It made a soft, final sound when it landed. I didn't abandon anyone, I said. I stopped paying for a life I wasn't invited into. I slid the papers forward. Deed, mortgage, cruise payments, auto debits, dates circled in pen, names on accounts. My name, no one else's. Linda scoffed. Money isn't everything. You said it was when it was mine, I replied. The mediator adjusted her glasses. Read slowly, carefully, then looked up at Linda. The property was solely titled in Mr. Halverson's name. That's not fair, Linda snapped. We were married. Yes, the mediator said. But marriage doesn't change title ownership. Rick leaned forward. I'm her father. Emily deserved that house. I looked at him. Really looked. Same smug grin he'd had when he borrowed money at that barbecue years ago. Never paid it back. Never intended to. Really? I said. You mean like she deserved child support? Rick flinched. I've got those receipts too, I said. Braces, tuition, rent, health insurance gaps you never filled. Emily looked up at that. Wet eyes. But sharper now. Recognition. The mediator cleared her throat. This isn't about feelings, she said. Legally speaking, Mr. Halverson acted within his rights. Linda's face flushed. So he just gets away with it? I met her eyes. I didn't get away, I said. I paid for 14 years. That was the price. No one clapped. No gavel fell. But something shifted. Linda sank back in her chair. Rick looked away. Emily stared at her hands. The mediator closed the folder. There's no standing here to challenge the sale, she said. We're done. Outside, the sun was bright on the steps. I stood there for a minute, breathing in air that didn't ask anything of me. Emily came out last. She stopped a few feet away. I didn't know about the money, she said. I know, I told her, and I did. But knowing now mattered. She nodded. No hug. No apology. Not yet. I walked to my truck alone. The envelope was lighter than it had been going in. The river was low that fall. Low enough to show the rocks usually hidden under the current. Sharp backs breaking the surface, forcing the water to bend around them. That's what I did most mornings, watched. brought a thermos and a folding chair down to the bank and let the cold roll in off the water while the world kept moving somewhere behind me. The rental was small. 1 bedroom, kitchen that barely held a table, walls thin enough to hear the neighbor's TV when the volume crept past 9. I didn't mind. I slept better there. Not longer, just deeper. No creaks in the hallway. No texts breaking the silence. Just me and the sound of a house that didn't ask anything from me. The realtor, Karen, dropped off the final paperwork in a large white envelope. She smiled when she handed it over, that kind of quiet smile people give you when they think you've survived something they don't fully understand. Inside was a card from the Moraleses. Ben and Alyssa. Thank you, it said. A photo of the ultrasound again. This time with a note. Her name will be Isabel. I set it on the new table. The one I bought secondhand. The old one. The one where Emily had cried over math homework. Where Linda had smiled while I grilled steaks and paid for everything behind the scenes. Was someone else's now. And for the first time that felt like a gift. I didn't hear from Linda for weeks. When I did, it was an email. Short. Formal. About mail forwarding and a vet bill she thought I still owed from 2 years ago. I forwarded it to my attorney. No reply. No sign-off. Just moved it out of my life like it was trash I didn't want to carry anymore. Emily texted once in October. Can we talk sometime? I stared at it for a while. Thought about the night she leaned into me with her math book spread wide. About the way her shoulders finally relaxed when I said, "We'll figure it out together." She was 12 then. All knees and questions. All hope. Somewhere between that moment and the cruise, the space between us filled with quiet disappointments. I replied, "We can talk. When you're ready to listen, too." We met at a coffee shop halfway between where I was and wherever she thought she lived now. It was a neutral place. Gray walls. A glass case with muffins nobody touched. She looked older than I remembered. Not aged, just aware. She sipped her coffee like she knew how fast things cooled. "I didn't know about the money," she said finally. I nodded. I wasn't keeping score. She looked down. "But you were." "No," I said. "I was keeping promises." Her eyes brimmed, but she blinked them dry. I shouldn't have said what I said. I didn't rush to forgive her. I didn't pat her hand or say it was okay. I let the silence sit between us, thick and honest. Eventually, it softened on its own. "I'm not asking to go back," she said. "I just didn't realize what it cost you." "That's the thing about costs," I said. "You don't feel them if someone else is paying." We finished our coffee, hugged awkwardly, brief, like people trying to learn a new way to be in the same room. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was an honest one. I could live with that. I started stopping by the VFW again on Thursdays. Walt was there, same stool, same beer. One night he looked at me, nodded toward the river beyond the window. "You look lighter," he said. "I am," I answered. He grinned, just barely. Turns out silence weighs less than pretending. Winter came early. I bought a thicker coat. Started cooking for one. Burned less food. Slept through the night more often. Some nights I caught myself thinking about the house on East Locust. The door that never quite latched unless you kicked it. The chair at the head of the table. The way I used to push it in gently, like I didn't want to leave fingerprints. I don't do that anymore. I drive past it sometimes. Not to stare. Not to linger. Just to make sure it's still standing. That someone's tending the lawn. That the porch light still flickers the way it always did in late November. One night, a new light was up in the window. Christmas came early, I guess. I didn't feel bitter. I felt something quieter than that. Like watching your old jacket on someone else. Doesn't fit you anymore. Might fit them just right. I got another text from Linda on Thanksgiving. One line, "I hope you're proud of yourself." I didn't answer, because I am. Quietly. Not the kind of proud you put on a shelf. The kind you carry like a scar you stopped covering. And maybe that's the part no one tells you. Leaving doesn't always look like walking out. Sometimes it's just stopping. Stopping the money, the forgiveness, the explanations, the rehearsed apologies for existing. Sometimes it's just turning off your phone, locking your door, and watching the river in silence. The last time I saw Rick, it was in a gas station parking lot. I didn't plan it. He was getting gas. I was buying windshield wiper fluid. Our eyes met across the lot. He smiled, then dropped it when I didn't return it. He got back in the car without a word. Drove off like a man who'd never stayed long enough to learn what staying costs. I thought I'd feel something. I didn't. Linda filed for divorce in January. Official this time. Her lawyer wanted the usual. Partial assets. Retirement. Old promises never written down. My lawyer mailed back a single sentence. No claim to marital property established under Iowa Code Section 598. 21. I didn't even have to show up in court. Just sign the paperwork on a Tuesday morning. Same pen I used to label boxes when I moved out. The only thing I felt was relief. Not clean, not triumphant. Just still. Emily texted again in March. I got the internship. Chicago. Starts in June. I replied, proud of you. She didn't say thank you. I didn't expect her to. But later that week, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. Postmarked from Ames. Inside, a folded piece of notebook paper and a photograph. The photo was of the three of us maybe 10 years ago. Linda, Emily, and me. Christmas. I was holding a mug with a chipped handle. Emily was smiling with her whole face. I remembered that day. On the back, she'd written, "You weren't just there. You mattered." I set the photo on the windowsill. Didn't frame it. Didn't hide it. Just let it be. Some nights now I sleep with the window open. The wind off the river smells like everything I used to call hard work and coming home. The AM radio still works if you turn the dial just right. I like that. Things that require effort tend to tell the truth. If you've ever been erased quietly, slowly, while smiling in photographs, I want you to hear this part clearly. Love without respect is just labor, and silence, when chosen, can be strength. I don't know if Emily will ever call me dad again. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. What matters is that now I no longer need her to. I did my part. I paid the cost. I left the table. So let me ask you, was I wrong? Was I cruel to walk away from a family that smiled in my direction but never saw me? Or did I simply stop paying a bill that should have never been mine? You decide. But ask yourself this. If someone told you that you didn't matter again and again, in words, in silence, in the space they saved for someone else, would you have stayed? Or would you have done what I did? Stood up, pushed the chair in, and walked away?